Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today, we are here again with Dale Wilshire. Super excited. This is part two of our three-part annual planning series. So, today's episode is on casting a vision. We're going to take a look at her proprietary Wheel of Life exercise. We're going to talk a little bit about goal setting. And this is all in preparation for our episode coming at the end of December, where we talk to you about how to reach your goals in 2025, how to make your goals stick. So, let's get right into the conversation. Dale, as always, so excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks. I'm thrilled to be here, Patricia. Always fun to talk goals and to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have this really cool Wheel of Life exercise, and we know that it's downloadable. If you haven't caught the first part of this three-part series, go catch that Reflect on 2024 annual reviews strategies episode. In either case, the Wheel of Life is linked in the description. And so if you have it in front of you, let's have Dale start us off with a brief explanation of what it is.
Yeah, the Wheel of Life is a classic life coaching exercise. It was one of the first that I learned. But what I found is they divided all areas of life usually into 6 or 8 areas. So it looks like a circle with pie, like slices of pie out of it. So I, through, years of coaching and working with different people, kind of found the areas that seemed to be the most important to consider as categories, whether we're looking year to year or even thinking, more broadly in a 10-year kind of plan. And this just allows you to focus in on specific areas that you may neglect. You may not think
Mm,
that heavily about them. And these sometimes can be the long-term things that lead to a meaningful life, but they're not as urgent. People aren't requiring these things of you. So it is just a great overall way to consider where you are with your level of satisfaction in these areas so that you can appreciate what's allowing you to feel fulfilled in that area, do more of that, but then also be
mm.
specific about the goals that you want to set for the coming year that will address some of the areas that are not as great as you'd like them to be.
Okay. And so we've got multiple areas here. We've got living environment, work and service, finances, health and fitness, community, family, rest and recreation, faith and growth. There's a couple of tweaks that you made in here. So if we are using a different wheel of life, we may not see some of these items. I know I was personally surprised and happy to see living environment, but share how you came to maybe some of these tweaks that you've made over the years to what typically is seen as a very general wheel of life.
I think starting with the living environment one, I have just found that our spaces impact either how productive we are, how satisfied we are. So that can be your car. It could be,
Mhm.
your office, whether that's at home or in another building. It can be just the general state of what you're doing in your home. I found that a lot of people, once we started talking about goals, they're like, oh, and I've got that one closet I want to get to. I mean, everybody has a closet, right?
Yeah.
Or they have some area where they're like, I just dump stuff in there because I don't have time. I would love to remember to clean that out or start making small progress toward those goals. So that just always came up for people. I don't care what level of business they're in, there was always something around living environment. That's something that I want people to consider because it certainly can take up a lot of time and infect us in different ways. The other one that I find that's a little different for me is I have one for faith and growth. So whether that's personal growth or that's your spiritual life, usually there are things that people see kind of in a similar way. So I want
Mhm.
to make sure those were honored, especially if you're doing this kind of work, you're usually into your own personal growth or you're trying to align with what you believe is part of your calling, what the kind of person that you want to be. So that's a slice that I definitely added. When I do a 10-year plan with people, I will add on something that we might put in rest and recreation, but that's more like travel or learning.
Mhm.
Sometimes learning can go in growth. So, and I do have rest and recreation. I think that's key because that is both play and rest. Because sometimes we only think of rest or sometimes we only think of play, but we don't tend to think of both. So those are the areas that I think kind of cover most of it. Now, a lot of my professionals will set bigger goals in one area more than the other. You don't have to set equal amounts of goals for
Mm.
each of these areas. Some are going great. Some you already have ongoing habits and practices that work really well. So it's the ones that you want to add something new or they're just hard. Like hydration is always hard for me. I don't care how many years I've worked on this. It's always a goal because I have to continue to put it in front of me.
Oh, that's so true. And I know last time we talked about this, you just mentioned you don't have to have equal goals or an equal level of commitment in each area. You can't be 100% in 7, 8 different places, right? And so I'm looking at my wheel of life and I'm like, okay, there's some areas that I'm really satisfied in. But it's still, I want to continue to commit time to those. And there's some areas that I'm like, I know I'm not getting enough rest and recreation. There, you could never give me enough rest and recreation, right? I mean, but when we look at the season of life that we're in this season, rest and recreation is not, it's not something that I'm, you know, what I want. I used to
Mhm.
take 3-day resets every 12 weeks. That was like a
Wow.
thing. Yeah, every 12 weeks, it's like a 3-day reset where 2 of the days were just nothing, like just relax, go out to a cabin or something. And that third day was more like strategy, like, okay, where are we going in the business? Where are we doing this? And lately, we haven't been able to do that. So to
Mhm.
me, mine is a little lower than I would like it on the rest and recreation. But I also acknowledge, hey, this is a season
Mhm.
that we're in, and we get to decide in this next quarter, in this next year, do we want to continue on that route or do we want to shift that? Um, so yeah, mine is a little bit uneven, but I think I'm
That's
relatively
Yeah,
happy.
that's first of all very normal.
Mhm,
That's kind of where we are, and different things can happen. I think I mentioned last time, when I was in my last house, I was very content. I had a high number, and then we decided to buy my in-laws house and go through this whole gut, and so my number just crashed based on one decision. So,
mhm.
and that's fine. That was the season I was in. Whether you have small children, you're an empty nester, you're single, you're married without children, like all of that is going to be reflected. And it is just a snapshot of where you are today. It is not an indication of your life or your value or your potential. It's just where you are today so that you can do something about it.
Yeah, and you said something that hit a chord. You said, "Because of one decision I made," right? And sometimes these are very intentional decisions, or we
Mhm,
might look at our wheel, like, we talked about rest and recreation. For me, I might look at it and say, "Okay, that was an intentional decision." But
mhm.
I might look at a different area, maybe community or maybe finances, and say, "Oh, that's not as high as I'd want it." And I don't know where I kinda lost the ball on that one, and that's normal too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But now we get to focus in on one little thing, and some things just are greater priority than others. And
Mhm.
that's a very personal kind of a thing. So, at different times, one person in your life may need a lot more attention, and that is what you feel. So all of a sudden, family, and I have it distinguished between family as one slice and community as another. So
Mhm.
family, it could be just the people in your house, or maybe it's your parents and siblings if it's not too big of a crowd. And then community could be all your friends and your community, church community, whatever, volunteer communities. So thinking about where those are happening and what is most important, but just remember, just because it's on here and somebody may say, I have a huge community and I need more. I don't have a huge community. I kind of have a huge business community, but I don't need as much. So
Mhm.
please honor what is important to you. It differs for every single person. We cannot put effort into all of these at one time. We can't.
Yeah, definitely. I know some people who have beautiful houses
Mhm,
and maybe they're, like you said, don't need as much community. I
mhm.
have a very small family, very happy with it. But maybe my faith area is really big. And so, okay, so we've taken some time to sort of explain the model, how scoring works and how, one area might be smaller than the other, and that's okay. So let's say that we're all sitting around. And if you're sitting here doing this with us, let's say we're all having coffee together. We're at the table. We all have our wheel of life scored. And let's assume you don't. Go ahead and pause it. I'll give you 2.2 seconds. Pause it, finish your wheel of life, and then come back to us. And
By the way, all
assuming,
you're doing, can I say, is just putting a dot on the line
Mm,
that gives you the scoring from 1 to 10. Just put a dot on where that number rests for you. You don't have to prove it to anyone. Sometimes I have no idea why. I just know it's a 7. I can't prove it, but just choose your number for each one of those areas.
oh, thank you for that. I do know sometimes we can get caught up on like, what's a 5 and what's a 7? What's a 10? So I get that. I get that. Okay. So you've paused it, you've completed your wheel of life. Now you're coming back to the table. Dale, what do we do now?
Now there's some coaching questions below this. So I think this is a way to reflect on what's going well and where you want to put some emphasis. So I want to start with the positive because sometimes we go immediately to the negative. Like, oh my gosh, that has a 3. I'm on it. Yes, we do want to be on something, especially if it's a 7 or below. 7 is good, but once it gets below 7, we definitely want to put some time toward that. But let's start with what is going well. And especially when people are doing, career pivots, they're looking for new jobs. Man, you need to be reminded of the other areas in your life that are going well because that will provide, enjoyment and also some dopamine for the hard task you're doing elsewhere. So, start with really your top 2 or 3 areas. And so for me, my top number is 9. And by the way, if you're going to do this next year, because I do this every single year as an exercise. So if you're going to do it next year, start your wheel of life fresh. Don't look at last year's first. That's kind of fun to look back and see what's changed after the fact, but take it fresh every single time. And so for me, my highest areas are work, rest and recreation, and family. I gave them all a 9. And so go ahead and list those out. Like just take a moment. And then the next question is, what led you to give those the highest scoring categories? And that's where you can really assess your life. Like, because I have these great connections, or because I have been working on this, or whatever it is, these are the strengths and the resources that you want to leverage going forward. Do you want to pause there before I talk about the rest of it? Because there are several questions here to assess.
Yeah, let's pause really quickly. You mentioned that you can only do so much in each season, and that is so important. We are so quick as humans to go on to the next thing. And often, what that means is we move on once we've taken action, we move on to the next action. But what we're doing is we're setting something in motion. We're making commitments for ourselves in the future. And I actually just recently, literally just a few days ago, had a conversation with a client who said, I had. Was thinking about starting coaching a few months back, but when I talked to someone, I realized that I had so many things going on. There was a big career change, there was a big move going on. I was going to a whole new environment. And when you have that many changes, you do have to
Hmm.
give yourself time to adjust, to acclimate to, any learning curve is going to take up some more time. And there's the time expense, there's the
Hmm.
budgetary expense, but there's also the piece that we often don't look at is the emotional expense of the changes that are happening in our life, which can be more impactful on our energy than probably anything else. If you have a really positive um, outlook, a really positive impact on your emotions, on your day to day, you can actually sustain quite a bit more work than if the emotional side is a little bit more negative. It's going to be more draining, and you can do very little and still feel drained. So, that was one piece that when you said it, it struck a chord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, ditto. I'll just say
Ditto.
that. So
Yeah.
moving on, once you've assessed what's going well, and that's just celebrating. Truly, it's kind of what we did with the year-end review. This is
Mhm.
celebrating what is going well and just paying attention to what is working, what things that you want to keep up because they're making a difference. Then we move into what's not working. So I ask you on the wheel of life to go ahead and list out your low scoring areas. So again, 2 or 3 of those. So for me, that would be community, finance, and faith. That's just where I am this year, and they're slightly different than last year, which is fine for different
Mhm.
reasons. And in fact, some of them were goals that I just can't seem to move forward. I'm going to need God to move some things around for me to
Yeah.
make it happen. And so it's on there again, but now it feels like it's more of an issue, so it's now in a
Mhm.
lower scoring area. And then the next question has you think about, if you were to score those at a 10, what would need to happen basically? What
Mhm.
would you need to do or add or subtract for those numbers, those lower scoring areas to go up to a 10? And if that feels like pie in the sky, I get it. Like dial them up a couple of notches. What would it take to make that happen? That's where you get a really quality list of some things that may or may not end up being on your priority list, because all of
Mhm.
this needs to get condensed. This is a chance to brainstorm. That's what this is. This is a chance to get everything on the table And then we start to prioritize and determine which are the ones that we want to put our effort toward to begin with. Maybe as
Mhm.
you finish some, you can add some others, but that happens secondarily. And
So
then
what
I
you're
have,
saying is
oh,
that
go
we
ahead.
don't have to do everything that we put on our list.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's helpful.
Absolutely. Or absolutely not, I should say. Just use this as an opportunity to think through it. These are options that you have. So don't feel like if you write it down, you're like, man, I'm going to have to do that. I'm not excited about that. Because actually, the next question is, which area are you most motivated to work on?
Mm,
And what I actually answered was health and fitness, which was kind of in the middle for me. But I've got some great goals going right now. I've got some great support. I just started CrossFit. I'm having the time of my life doing CrossFit. My daughter is actually a trainer there, which is super fun. But I have a lot of motivation, and that kind of dopamine can actually transfer to other things. So I
mm,
definitely want to keep that up. I also am very motivated to work on my work goals. But then I asked at the very end, in what area can you make the biggest difference with the least amount of effort? So that
mm,
can tell you a great place to start because a lot of times we come to these feeling a little stuck or we're just like, "Ugh," it's one of those seasons. So, where can you start to move the needle on
mhm,
goals in general? And again, just gain a little momentum without it taking everything that you have or rearranging your entire schedule. Those are important. And then from there, you're going to want to like list out individual goals in each of these areas and then start to sort and order. They're all there so you can go get them. If you want to review, I recommend you review this like every quarter to
mm,
see are things still priority like they used to be when you started this. And but then I like people having this place to dump all their good ideas. If all of a sudden in 3 months you're like, oh my gosh, I saw this really cool trip I want to go on one day. Great. You don't want to lose that. Put it on your list. Doesn't mean you have to act on it. It's safe and sound, and you can move on to the goals that you want to work on now.
I love that. And your last 2 questions, what are you most motivated to work on? And what could make the biggest difference with the least amount of effort? Those 2 questions I think are the 2 questions that tend to be missed on a lot of wheel of life exercises where it's like, "Where are you? Here's a report card. Oh my gosh, you have to improve in A, B, C, D, and E," right? So you end up with a longer list, more stress, less satisfied, right? So to be able to look and say, okay, like for me, rest and recreation, health and fitness and finances are the 3 areas that have been a little bit less, a little bit lower for me, just given the season that I'm in. And when you said, "What are you most motivated to work on?" What I thought was, "Ooh, well, now that I have this living environment where I'm kind of getting really motivated in it. Now I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, here's an area of little effort. I'm already motivated to work on my living environment. Let's work on putting a gym setup right
Yeah.
in my home, and that's going to sort of snowball into an overall more well-rounded and better life."
Yes,
I'm
yes,
excited
and
for
that's
that.
what this is all about. This is your whole life.
Mhm,
Now, what I have found when I will work with clients and we're kind of transitioning into the new year, we'll go through a whole process. I'll help people pick their top 2 goals in each of these areas. And then then you would have 16 since there's 8 to begin with, and then we kind of narrow that down to 5, but that's a holistic list. That's
mm,
really honoring all the different areas of your life. A lot of my clients will have more when we get down to 5 for the year. I love for people to have 5 big goals for the year. It's easier to hold on to and keep coming back to, but then you're going to have smaller activities that you will use to kind of realize those. But not all 5 have to come from 5 different areas on here. I will
mm,
say, because for me, a lot, at least 3 of my goals come from the work area. I'm an empty nester. So I don't have grandkids yet, so I get to put a lot of my focus into my work. So that's great. I will have at least 3. I say don't make all 5 of yours one category, especially if it's work. Make sure at least one of the categories, if not 2, belongs to some other area so that we do have good balance. We do have a life to the full in more areas than just one.
Okay, so I've gone through this process, and if you're listening, then we're all here at the table sketching out, right, and writing our answers on our Wheel of Life handout. I know I've got my 3 areas. The one that I'm most motivated to work on is probably health and fitness with a little bit of that rest and recreation in there. If I can tie those together, that would be ideal. Um, what area could make the biggest difference with the least amount of effort. For me, it's that home gym. It just feels like such a natural way to pivot into, from living environment to health and fitness. So where do I go now? How do we start to like settle and establish these goals and create a plan for the year that's a little bit more set?
Yeah, I recommend that people use index cards. So it's a tool that I use when helping determine values. So your brain can choose from two choices, so much better than, multiple. You look at this, it gets mind numbing. So if you take a lot of these goals and you put them on index cards, then you start what's called running a tournament, where you just pull two at random and think, if I had to choose one of these goals to work on first, what feels more important? And this is how you start to sort in order. You get a winner, it's not really a loser. So maybe you get a love pile and a like pile. And you just continue to do that until you start to sort in order in a way that you're like, okay, these keep coming up on top. This is probably where I want to start. So
Mm,
that's a way to start executing on things. I also have, again, I'm really big on lots of ways to display this. It's really important that you know what your goals are so you can go back to it monthly. We do that as far as reviews. But think about it, if you were to take all these goals and maybe break them down by quarter, what would you want to get done by the first quarter next year? What is a goal that, like,
mm,
if do you want to get that done before you start the new year, your new home gym, because you want to enjoy it all year long, or you want to do it before the weather gets cold? And sometimes summer is crazy. If you have younger kids, you don't get a heck of a lot done in the summer. So how do we honor that time by maybe finishing some things beforehand? So I want people to think in terms of their natural rhythms and seasons and schedule. And as they prioritize them, start kind of putting them into a place. And so whether you have like a four square kind of pattern where you're putting some goals in there, or you're listing them. Again, I have a sheet of my top 5, and then I'm checking that all the time, making sure my monthly goals, my quarterly goals are working toward those. And then I have some smaller goals toward that. So
mm,
however you like to break them down, I'm still a fan of putting this on some kind of paper that you can display, because if it disappears into your digital calendar, you're never going to be reminded of it. How can you
mm.
keep this out in a way that allows you to be thinking of it, and even unconsciously, as your brain is thinking about how to make these things happen?
Wow. This was very valuable. I mean, to summarize, I love the tournament game.
Yeah.
I've done value sort, right? Where you sort the cards, very important, not important. But this one seems a little bit more fun. Like you have
Yeah.
the two cards and there's gonna
Yeah.
be a winner. There's gonna
Yeah.
be a like and a love.
Yeah.
But you
You don't
also
get rid of any of them. You keep them all too. If the ones don't make it in your top 5 or top 10, hold on to them, because then you'll go back through them. And it is fun to see what your goals were, a
and you
year
might
ago or 2
decide
years ago.
that's a good
Yeah.
option for next year. I like that. It feels a little less like I'm saying no to something and more like I'm saying not yet.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is, because you've already labeled it as something that feels important. But again, it just may be like, I would like to do some decorating downstairs in my house. I would like to put some wallpaper in this one bathroom. But until a big project finishes at our house that's going to unleash a few more dollars, it's not a
Mhm.
priority now. So I just don't think about it until that happens. But once it does, then it might raise its head. And now I want to put it on the, top of the list.
Yeah, and those on the top of the list, you brought up some really great points, ordering based on the order, what's gonna snowball into the next thing or what's gonna make the next thing more feasible, things like weather, seasons, finances, schedules with school and summer, those
Yes.
types of things. So, yeah, I really appreciate how you helped us go from wheel of life, where am I right now, all the way to how do I want to live my life in the next year? And what's the best way of making that happen? Not just give me a bunch of to do items, but like, how can I actually carry this out in my life? So it has been so helpful to have this conversation, to be here with you again. If you were to leave us with a few final words on the wheel of life and goal setting, what would that be?
I just think it's such a cool opportunity to dream a little bit, and to be authentic and real about where things are, so that you can open up to the possibilities before you. Have fun with this. Put your pie in the sky things down on paper. That's actually how they start happening. So don't, even if you've had one of those rotten years, and believe me, I've had many. some things are still going well for you. Honor
Mhm.
those, and then look about, I always gauge it next year. Am I further ahead this year, especially in those areas than I was last year? Great things do lie ahead. So let's see how we can be intentional about making those happen.
Mm, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing those last words. And if you're here with us at the table, you're doing your wheel of life and you're thinking, okay, I've got my goals down, I got my index cards, I'm ready to go. How do I actually make sure that these don't fall by the wayside? Then tune in for part 3 at the very end of December, the last few days. I believe it's December 31st, where we will go over an entire episode on how to reach your goals in 2025, how to actually make the goals that you came up with today stick until you accomplish them. So Dale is going to join us again for that. So Dale, in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your week, rest of your month. And if you're listening to us, thanks again for tuning in. Know that we love you. We're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
Hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. If you found this episode helpful, please tap the 5-star review on the show's homepage in your podcast app. It would absolutely make my day, and it helps others discover the Uncommon Career Podcast. Now, to download your free career resources and learn how I help seasoned professionals land amazing offers in as little as 90 days, click on the link in the description or go to theuncommoncareer.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.